you know what, maybe I'll start doing this as a recurring trend. I think this is kind of fun. So the other week, I asked my viewers, if you're still on X11, I want to know why. I don't want theoretical things you could do but don't actually care about, but the actual real reasons that X11 is keeping you on it. Why are you still an X11 user in 2025? This got a couple of responses. I also posted on Twitter as well, got some responses over there as well, and Blue Sky Mastodon not so much, but I did post there as well. There was quite a bit of repeated sentiment. I'll leave all of the threads linked down below if you want to read every single one of the comments, but again, a lot of people were saying kind of the same repeated points. Now, 99% of people, great, did a good job, told me why they were using it. Awesome. That's amazing. There was a very small minority that was like, how dare you ask me why I'm using X11? You need to justify why I shouldn't use X11. Why should I use Wayland? My guy, I'm just asking you why. Like, it's okay. You don't have to use Wayland. I'm just asking you a question. Chill out. But most people are normal, functioning humans that can answer a question about their preferences and not have a mental breakdown thinking it's a slight against them. So let's talk about the most obvious one, the one that all of you almost certainly know, and you can probably guess it right now. It's gonna be the most common one. My DE of choice doesn't support it / fully support it yet. Whether that be XFCE, Mate, something you wrote yourself, or you're using a window manager basically no one's ever heard of and have probably been using it the past 20 years, like StumpWM. This is configured in Lua. I've never met anyone else that uses it. And all of these are completely valid reasons. I don't think there's anything wrong with this, right? Like, this is the reason why most people at this point are on Wayland. Most people are using GNOME or KDE. And for a long time now, they've had Wayland support, and also on most distros have been defaulting to Wayland. And if you're someone who just uses one of those and then uses it how it works out of the box, you're not going to think twice about it. But if you're a happy Mate user, if you're a happy XFCE user, like, you're not going to just swap desktops because you want to swap desktops to get Wayland. You like what you're on, and you will swap when they swap. When that's going to be, I don't know. It might be 5 years, might be next month. No one really knows until something actually drops. Mate does have a... No, Cinnamon. Cinnamon's another good example as well. Cinnamon has an experimental Wayland session. It's just very early on and just not very good yet. But if you're someone who makes your own or uses some random window manager no one's ever heard of, for you it's more likely that Linux is a hobby. And you're not just using this environment because it's something that you like. You're using it because you enjoy the process of configuring it in the way that you like to configure it. And for those people, like, if you're a DWM user, right? DWM users are always going to be DWM users because they specifically are looking for what DWM offers, and nothing else is going to offer that. If you like Awesome WM, right now, there's just nothing that looks like Awesome WM, that configures the way Awesome WM does. And if you like that system, hey, you're going to stick with it until you can no longer stick with it, or something else comes along that maybe catches your interest. And in a very similar vein as that, you have a job, and your job requires you to use X11 because the software you use only works properly on X11. Worst case scenario, you have to run some tracking software that only works on X11. So you kind of have to do so, right? Like, for a lot of people, this is the same reason why they can't use Linux full stop. Their job requires them to be on Windows or on Mac, and they can't use the software on Linux, and they just don't really have a choice. In the same vein, you make use of some weird little niche software, like PCM, and it just doesn't really work on Wayland, right? Like, or at least work properly on Wayland. And if you have a reason like this, there's not really much that can be done. Also, I know someone's going to get annoyed if I don't mention it, X11 forwarding. And X11 forwarding has its issues, but at the same time, it is something where if you have a working solution, it's difficult to justify changing it, especially if you are using it in a business, in a corporate context. There are remote desktop solutions that exist on Wayland. They have existed for a very long time now. Anyone who tells you can't do remote desktop on Wayland is either lying to you or has really outdated information. There are tools that you might want to use which don't have Wayland support yet, or the support is experimental, but you can absolutely do so. Also, you can do X11 forwarding with Xwayland. Xwayland is just an X11 server. It's just, you've got to set things up in a slightly different way and know how to actually mess around with Xwayland. So it's not like you entirely lose out on it. It's just, you need to approach it in a slightly different way. Now, here is another niche, but one that is a very big deal for people that does affect. I am an artist with a pen display. So this is something which is a very big deal, and it works, right? Like, you can absolutely use a drawing tablet. Pressure works. All of this stuff works. But if you're an artist and you do this professionally, you want things to be working in a particular way. You want things to be as good as they can be. And this is something the KDE project is taking very seriously. They have a whole section on graphics tablet support, and this is being worked on. There are people that want this resolved. There are people that are taking this seriously. And graphics tablet support is one of those things that was gonna be a blocker for GNOME dropping its X11 support on Fedora. Like, that was a big part of the discussion. I believe it came up in the same discussion on KDE as well. So, yes, this is something which is being worked on. Now, I have seen some issues where people are blaming Wayland for specific implementation issues. So this is someone who is running a camera surveillance system, and they were having crashes when using Plasma. I don't run my system for, days upon days on end trying to run a surveillance system, so I can't really comment on that. But this isn't like a native Wayland problem. This isn't a problem with Wayland itself. This seems like a general issue with KDE. I don't know if he's maybe running an older version where that could have been a problem. Entirely possible. But I've seen other people complain about things like, oh, Cinnamon Wayland doesn't work great. Like, Cinnamon Wayland is still very much an alpha. It's not even an alpha yet. It's like a pre-alpha. It's very experimental, and that's what you're going to get with all software. Like, this isn't actually a problem with Wayland, and these are not issues which are cannot be solved because it's on Wayland. It's just, in some cases, like on Cinnamon, the Wayland implementation is far less mature, so it's going to have additional bugs. In a sense, that is still a concern, but at the same time, I wouldn't blame Wayland for that. Now, this one I've made a dedicated video on. Full screen issues on games when more than one monitor is involved. It's like playing Russian roulette. You never know which monitor is getting the game. So, this is very compositor dependent, and it's compositor dependent in a different way than implementation issues. This is an issue with Wayland Protocols itself and the lack of a protocol for sharing primary monitor information. This is something which should be resolved, and I hope gets resolved, and I hope Valve cracks some skulls and it gets resolved. But for now, yeah, is still a problem. And going back to that one about Mate from earlier, since it is a convenient one, Wayland doesn't support global hotkeys. So, there is a portal solution in place, and this has existed for a long time. I believe it's implemented in both KDE and GNOME as well. The problem is it's not really appealed to third-party app developers because it's one of those protocols, it's one of those solutions which was written in a vacuum without application developers getting involved. So effectively what happened is you would need to rewrite your entire hotkey system from the ground up because you're not configuring the hotkeys in the application anymore. You're configuring them in this external portal window, and then they're shared with the application and they're allowed through. And it's probably never going to be adopted, if I'm being completely honest. And honestly, I do think there's going to have to be a proper real Wayland solution developed that allows hotkeys to actually function correctly, because I don't see complex applications ever adopting this solution. I don't see even basic applications outside of the desktops adopting this. And whilst you might think the reason is dumb, I can't discredit this one. I just like the X11 architecture. that's fine, right? Like, if you just like X11, you are just comfortable on it, if you don't see any additional things added to Wayland which would make your experience any better, hey, like, that's fine, right? Like, if there's nothing so far that's appealed to you, the software's still there. Things are going to keep moving forward around you. Desktops are going to start dropping X11 support, but if you're using something like a DWM, hey, like, that's never going to drop it because that's all it has. That's fine. In the same vein, there are a lot of people on Linux who run old GPUs, especially old NVIDIA GPUs, like this person on a GT610. The problem with old GPUs like this is the NVIDIA drivers are so much better now. They're considerably better on modern cards. You don't really have those problems that exist with Wayland. This is not a supported card, like, even remotely. So this is still... I don't even know what GPU driver version is the latest supported here. So all of the changes of, I want to say maybe the past 3-4 years are not on this card. Here's someone on the GT710 of very similar era. They're on the NVIDIA 470 drivers, so probably roughly the same thing on the 610 as well. These are still horribly buggy on Wayland, and they're always going to be horribly buggy, and they're never going to be a well-supported GPU. That's just never going to happen. At this point, your best bet is trying to use the NVIDIA Open drivers, but frankly, that's not going to be great either. At the end of the day, you're not going to have a good Wayland experience until, you buy, let's say an RTX card, you buy a 3050 or 3060 when that's like a 15-year-old GPU. At that point, you have a good experience. But until then, there's nothing that's going to help these people. And it's not just old GPUs, but just old hardware in general. Here's someone on a really old laptop, and X11 is just lighter. Now, on modern hardware, the difference between Wayland and X11 is minuscule, right? Like, in many cases, it's actually, like, slightly better, it's slightly worse, it sort of bounces back and forth depending on the workload. But if you're using something that's this old, yeah, if you have a Sandy Bridge Intel CPU, yeah, you kind of don't really have a choice. There are other people in similar sort of old hardware as well, and this person would probably have a slightly better experience, but even so, like, this system's probably pushing it. And really, these people are not going to have good experiences, again, until modern cards right now, until modern systems right now are 15 plus years old and they're on systems like that. And while some people have this as a requirement because they cannot afford anything else, some people just like older hardware. This person is running a 2005 laptop, and, like, if you just want to run it, like, that's cool. You can run it, but also it's just not gonna be great on modern software, right? Like, that's just not how it's gonna go. Here's something I've talked about quite a number of times, especially when the protocol was first being worked on and first being blocked by tons of people. Apps can't set window position on Wayland, and my multi-display pinball sim needs that. There are probably ways you can work around it, but again, if Linux is your third supported platform, everything else just lets you do it. Here's another person. Try to use any sort of CAD software on Wayland and you understand why. Wayland sounds nice in theory and works quite well for simple document viewer or text editor, but doesn't really work for anything else. So a lot of CAD applications like to use multiple windows, and you can set where the windows are. Like, that's totally fine. Then you reload the application, and they're all bundled into one little corner. So things like KDE are working on ways to deal with this issue, but again, like with some of the earlier stuff, like the primary monitors, there is no consistent protocol for handling this, unlike literally every other desktop operating system on the planet. This is one of those things where I understand the logic for why a lot of Wayland devs didn't want this solved, but at the same time, this is something developers expect to be able to do, and trying to take this away on some, like, moral grounds for why it's bad on Wayland does not work when Windows lets you do it, macOS lets you do it, X11 lets you do it. Wayland is this tiny little platform. Like, they're just gonna either not support the platform or ship broken software because they're not gonna work around whatever solution you come up with, which right now, There's no solution. Here's another one that makes a lot of sense. You don't use Linux. This person is an OpenBSD user, and you just don't have support for Wayland right now, because Wayland is very much Linux focused, and you can get it working on the systems, right? Like, there is effort to do that. FreeBSD has Wayland support, but even then, you might not want to use Wayland, you might want to use X11, and Wayland isn't being pushed as hard on the BSD side. Like, NetBSD doesn't even have support for it right now, and probably isn't going to have it anytime soon. The BSD world is very small on the desktop, and I understand that this is not like a very important thing for a lot of people, right? Like, Linux is desktop Unix at this point, obviously, minus macOS. No one cares about macOS because macOS isn't using X11 or Wayland anyway. Yes, there is an X11 server on macOS, but it's not what's powering the main desktop. Linux at this point is desktop Unix. Here's something that affects me and a few other people, but isn't that big of a deal for most. OBS. So OBS does work on Wayland. I'm using it right now. Anyone who tells you can't capture your screen on Wayland is a liar to you, because I'm literally doing it right now, and I have been doing it for the past couple of years. What doesn't work, though, is the embedded browser windows. This, at this point, isn't actually a problem with OBS. OBS wants to solve the problem. It's a problem with the dependency they use, that is the Chromium Embedded Framework, or CEF. It doesn't work properly on Wayland, and yeah, so upstream kind of needs to fix it, and then OBS will probably fix it very quickly after that. Here we have some things I've already talked about, remote desktop and XFCE, but X screensaver. So I understand both perspectives here. I know why Wayland developers don't care about supporting screensavers. There's no reason to keep your screen on all the time. It's literally just a way to raise your power bill. Like, that is the only function of a screensaver. Now, CRTs, there actually is a reason to use a screensaver. Makes a lot of sense. Now, you might say, oh, but what about my OLED screen? Just turn it off. If you're not at your monitor, just turn it off. This is a thing you can do. You don't have to, like, power it down. You can turn it off within the display server. Like, that's a thing that is functional. At the same time, I know why people like screensavers. They like seeing pretty graphics. Like, the same reason people like music visualizers. Is there any function to a music visualizer? No. You don't need it. But it's cool, right? Like, it's cool, and I get why people want to keep them around. Now, there are ways to do screensavers on Wayland. They're not great. Like, there's issues there, and the developer of X screensavers talked about these issues plenty of times before. I've done a video in the past. Maybe I'll do another one. I know recently he was talking about some issues, and he tried to get answers about it because he has been trying to get it to work on Wayland. But I don't think you're going to see a concerted interest from Wayland developers to fix this problem, right? Like, I think you need to come up with a reason to justify it to the devs, or just get it into individual desktops you like. Input, especially that of the non-Latin character variety. Japanese input, Korean input, Cyrillic, honestly, even just on-screen keyboards. If you ever wonder why on-screen keyboards aren't great on Wayland, there's like 3 different protocols. They're all half developed. The developer of the protocols has talked about how much of a mess they are and how nothing is in a good state. I think it was being developed out of the mobile space, and then the mobile space kind of died down and nothing got finished, but something needed to be there, and it's a whole mess. Let's talk XDO tool, or XDO tool. This is a tool for automating a lot of things on your system, like key presses or mouse presses or moving windows around, and a bunch of fancy stuff that is really cool on X11. There is a tool called YDO tool. This lets you do some of what XDO tool does, but it runs at a different level. XDO tool, you can control things happening directly in X11. YDO tool runs at a much lower level, so you might think that gives you more control, but it's at a level where it can't see what your Wayland compositor is doing, so it can still do things like key automation and things like that, but the full power is just not there and is never going to be there, because the functionality to control that stuff in Wayland simply does not exist. I know that over in KDE land, there is discussions on trying to do something. What that something means, how that's going to be addressed, entirely what they want to deal with, not clear. But it's definitely a point of concern, and one of the reasons why they haven't dropped the X11 session. Let's talk one I've covered on this channel a number of times: accessibility. Now, no one is trying to discredit that a lot of accessibility work is being done now. That's not what is happening. At the same time, if you are someone that relies on a screen reader, you rely on various other tools like Braille output, things like that, you can't just say, I want to go to the thing that is moving really fast, a lot of improvements are being made, because even though X11 isn't perfect, it's consistent. It is always going to be as bad as it currently is. There's no weird things that happen. It's always just okay. And eventually it'll get to a point where Wayland is better for all people. But until that point is the case, for people that don't trust it just yet, they're going to stick with the thing they know already works. Here's a fun one, and is kind of linked into a lot of other problems. Halted protocols. This is a protocol about remote desktop with multiple monitors. There is an open protocol about it. It was opened 2 years ago. The last comment on it was 9 months ago, and it's probably not going to go anywhere anytime soon until somebody comes around, like a big application developer, or somebody makes a stink about it, and then there's going to be like 100 comments talking about how much it's important, and then we've talked about how this tends to go. Yeah, like there are definitely issues where problems could be resolved if protocols were implemented. And if you're making an application, if there's an application you rely on that needs a protocol, and that protocol is in protocol hell, yeah, like, right, makes sense. In the same vein, we have this one right here. We've talked a bit about 1, 2, and 4 already, but I want to focus on 3. For some godforsaken reason, the people working on Wayland feel the need to reinvent everything and to claim that certain interaction models or expectations that every other OS has is wrong, such as the primary monitor thing, whereas I have things set up and they more or less work exactly as I need under X11. We've talked about this a bit, but I do want to hammer this home. There is a common trend within Wayland protocol development where, as a way to stop a discussion, as a way to like immediately waste everybody's time and halt everything, say, oh, this is too much like Windows, that means it's bad. Or this is too much like X11, that means it's bad. Like, never any justification on why it's bad because of that, but this idea where everything needs to be this reinvention. Everything that was done before is bad, and we have to do it differently. And I cannot wait. I hope so much that this becomes a bannable offense. I cannot wait for that to happen because I am so sick of seeing it, and it just wastes time. It has derailed so many conversations, and if that's all you have to add to the conversation, why are you even commenting, frankly? Short, simple, and sweet. Gaming and input latency. So this is a problem I often hear discussed. I am kind of interested in doing a blind test. Obviously, I can't do a blind test on myself, but bringing people in, bringing some of my friends in who don't have any context of X11 and Wayland, and get them to game on X11, get them to game on Wayland. See if they can feel a difference. See if there is actually a noticeable difference. Because there is a measurable difference. You can measure a consistent difference as long as you don't enable tearing and do a couple of other things in Wayland to basically eliminate it, and also run a high enough refresh rate where the difference is negligible anyway. But at 60 Hertz, test it and see if you actually can feel that difference. This is a niche, but also an important niche. I have a monitor that overscans. X11 fixes it with a shell command. Wayland fixes it by telling me to get a new monitor. Fake resolutions in Xrender are super cool. There's something that you basically never need to do. And there are so many ways to break your screen and break your system with fake resolutions and so many other things. But at the same time, in these weird edge cases, like again, you have a CRT or some weird monitor that has a wrong EDID table, this might be the only way to fix it. It's usually not a problem, but it can be. Windows not spawning where they should, we're talking about that, but menus appearing randomly all over the screen. So let me just show you something. Here is my file manager. This is PCMan FM. If I click right here, the menu's just off the screen, right? Like that. That shouldn't be a thing that is possible. There are applications that do so better. There are toolkits that do so better. but at the same time, it's just not a problem on X11, and it is on Wayland. When it comes to theming, most things are fine, but there are exceptions, hyper-complex themes like the Aero theme Plasma, where this is trying to replicate Windows Aero, and it's gotta do a lot of funky stuff to get that to work as well as it does, and it does it pretty well, and it doesn't fully support Wayland yet, so X11's the way you gotta do it. Now, do you have to run this theme? No, but you don't have to run Cinnamon either, right? Like, if you like it, if that's the thing you want to do, if you want your system to look like it has an Aero theme, like, more power to you. Going over to the Twitter side, drag and drop. There are issues with drag and drop between Wayland and X-Wayland or X11 applications. Or is it the other way around? I don't know. There's just weird inconsistencies where sometimes you drag a file and it doesn't do anything. I've mostly gotten used to it. It's fine. And if everything's on native Wayland, there's no issues. Nothing at all. It's just going back and forth between the two that things can just kind of break. And some people have these weird hyper niche use cases. Xorg supports having multiple cursors on the same screen no matter what window manager you use, even though they tend to have some glitches, but it does work to some extent. This can be done on Western, but basically nothing else because you don't need multiple cursors in like most cases. But like it is a thing you can do on X11, and this person wanted to have the ability for multiple people to operate on the same screen. I don't know why they want that, right? I have no idea why they want the function, but it is something that you can do, and without any explicit compositor to make that happen, it's not really a generic thing that's possible. Now look. Sometimes it's not really any good reason, and people are being a little bit too honest, right? I am a boomer. Change is scary. The actual real reason, though, is the same reason I use sys via net. I already know how to set it up and admin it, and the newer alternatives offer nothing of value to me, so you have a reason to switch. For some people, they are just happy on X11, and it's not that they hate Wayland, it's just there is nothing that Wayland is doing that is going to drastically change their workflow, so they just don't use it, right? Like, it's not an anger, it's nothing like that, it's just they're happy where they are, and they'll change eventually, maybe. But what about you? Why, if you're using X11, do you use it? And if you're on Wayland, what made you swap? Is it just your desktop went to Wayland and you went with it, or is there another reason? I'd like to know. So if you liked the video, go like the video. Be sure to subscribe as well, and maybe I'll do more of these videos. Maybe I'll do these like video prompt things. I think they are fun, and it gets some like community interaction, and yeah, it's cool. So if you really like the video, if you really like the video and you want to become one of these amazing people over here, check out the Patreon, Scribes, the Libera Pay, linked in the description down below. That's gonna be it for me, and join the dark side.